Hey there, friends. Welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're sipping tea in your favorite blanket or listening on a quiet walk through the trees, this story is just for you. Today, I want to tell you about one of the strange and oddly most heartwarming Uber rides I've ever had. And yes, it's safe for all ages. No drama here, just a cozy little journey full of unexpected joy. It all started on a rainy Thursday morning. The kind of morning where everything feels soft and sleepy. The clouds hung low like a cozy gray blanket, and the streets of my little town glistened with puddles that mirrored the trees. I had an early appointment across town, and instead of driving myself, I decided to call an Uber. Nothing too special. At first, I waited under the wide porch of a tiny cafe on Maple Street, breathing in the smell of fresh cinnamon rolls and the sound of rain tapping gently on the tin roof. It was peaceful, almost like the world had slowed down just for a moment. Then came the car. A small, pale blue hatchback pulled up, humming softly like a lullaby. The windows were slightly fogged, and I could see the silhouette of the driver waving warmly. I opened the door and was greeted with the scent of lavender and a burst of classical music. Not what I expected. "Good morning," chirped the driver, a cheerful older woman wearing a patchwork cardigan and a beaded bracelet that jingled with every move. Her name was Bonnie, and from the first moment, I knew this ride wasn't going to be ordinary. The inside of the car was decorated like a traveling cottage. The dashboard was covered in tiny potted succulents, and there was a plush mushroom-shaped pillow on the back seat. Wind chimes hung from the rear view mirror, clinking softly every time we hit a bump. "I like to make my passengers feel cozy," Bonnie said with a wink as she pulled away from the curb. "You never know who needs a little kindness." We drove slowly through the wet streets, the windshield wipers swaying in rhythm with the soft cello music. Bonnie pointed out all the little spots in town that I never noticed before: a hidden bookshop with ivy on the windows, a bakery run by twin sisters, even a little park where geese waddled around like grumpy old men. The ride was supposed to be 20 minutes, but time didn't feel real in Bonnie's car. It felt like I was floating through a dream. She told stories about her childhood in the countryside, her love for handmade quilts, and how she turned her car into a moving hug. By the time we pulled into the driveway of my destination, I didn't want to leave. "You ever need a ride and some good company, you know where to find me," she said with a smile that felt like warm soup on a cold day. And that was just the beginning. A week after my ride with Bonnie, I had another errand to run. The skies were bright this time, brushed with soft white clouds that drifted like feathers. Birds chirped from the rooftops, and the town smelled faintly of fresh bread and pine trees. I was in a good mood. Peaceful. Calm. I opened the app and requested another ride. I didn't think anything of it until the car pulled up. It was a bright yellow Volkswagen Beetle, polished to a shine, with a large sticker on the side that read, "Caution, cat on board." I blinked. Then the back window rolled down, and out popped the head of a large gray cat wearing a tiny hat. I burst out laughing. The driver, a young man with a bushy beard and a wide grin, leaned across the seat and waved. "Don't mind, driver," he said, motioning to the cat. "She likes to greet the guests." And yes, her name is Driver. I climbed in, completely enchanted. The inside of the car was filled with cat beds, dangling toys, and a little basket of snacks, both human and feline friendly. "Driver goes everywhere with me," the man explained. "She's the real star. I'm just the guy who follows the GPS." Driver, as it turned out, was no ordinary cat. She sat beside me during the ride, occasionally tapping my arm with her paw or curling up in the sunlight streaming through the window. She made little purring sounds every time we passed trees or birds. It was like she was narrating the ride in her own secret language. As we drove through quiet neighborhoods and tree-lined streets, the man told me all about how he had rescued Driver from an abandoned garden shed. She followed me into the car one day and refused to leave. "So now we're partners," he said with a proud chuckle. We passed a hill covered in wildflowers, and he slowed down just so I could admire the view. "This is our favorite spot," he said. "Driver likes to sit here and watch the butterflies." It was such a simple ride. No fancy surprises. Just a man, his cat, and a slow drive through beauty. but there was something magical about it. Something that made the world feel softer. When we reached my stop, driver jumped into my lap for a brief moment, looked up with those wise, sleepy eyes, and gave me the gentlest meow like a goodbye. As the car drove off, I stood for a while, watching it disappear around the corner, feeling like I'd just stepped out of a tiny fairy tale. And yes, I gave that ride 5 stars. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind where the sky is a soft watercolor of pastels, and the whole town seems to take a deep breath and rest. I just finished a long walk through the park, my legs tired but my heart content. I decided to call an Uber to get home. The app said, 5 minutes away, so I sat on a bench beneath a flowering tree, petals drifting down like sleepy snowflakes. A gentle breeze carried the smell of honeysuckle and the distant sound of wind chimes. Then the car pulled up. It was an old, sea-green station wagon, the kind you don't see much anymore. The driver, an older gentleman with kind eyes and a gentle smile, rolled down the window and said, "You must be the storyteller." I blinked. "Excuse me?" He smiled again, not unkindly. "You look like someone who carries stories. Hop in." Something about his voice made me feel safe. Curious. I got in. The car smelled of cedarwood and fresh oranges. The dashboard had a little wooden bird carved into it, and hanging from the mirror was a tiny dream catcher. The windows were just slightly foggy from the cool air inside, and outside, everything looked soft and distant like we were driving through a memory. We didn't talk much at first. He drove slowly, passing winding roads, quiet streams, and meadows filled with tall grass swaying in the breeze. Eventually, he spoke. "Every person I pick up, I learn something from. But some people, they already carry the lesson." I looked at him, confused and intrigued. "What do you mean?" "You," he said, glancing at me in the mirror, "remind me of myself when I was younger. Curious, kind, always searching. Never quite lost, but not fully found either." We passed a wooden bridge, and he slowed down even more. "This is my favorite spot," he said. "It's where I like to let the world go quiet." We sat in silence for a moment, just listening to the birds, the soft creak of the bridge, and the hush of water below. It wasn't awkward. It was peaceful. He eventually pulled up to my home, the sun now dipping low, casting golden light across the porch. Before I could thank him, he reached into the glove box and handed me a tiny folded piece of paper. "Don't open it until you're inside," he said with a knowing smile. I nodded, stepped out, and watched as he drove away, the green wagon disappearing like a dream at dawn. Inside, I unfolded the paper. It simply read, "Keep telling your stories. The world needs them." And just like that, I sat down on my couch, heart full, eyes soft, and began to write this one. Thank you so much for joining me on this cozy little ride through the weirdest Uber experiences I've ever had. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me next time for another warm, heart-hugging adventure. Until then, take care, stay cozy, and never stop noticing the magic in everyday things.